Good evening. It's Tuesday, March 3rd, and I'd like to call this General Committee meeting to order. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Something about clear bags, Mayor Doc? No? Okay, thank you. Seeing no declarations of pecuniary interest, I'll move to the approval of the agenda as amended. And just for your clarification, the report needed to be resubmitted because the dates in the original report were wrong. They auto-populated for February instead of March, and so that's the changes between the two. If there's no further discussion, can I get a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Mayor Daw, Councillor Maracas, all in favor? Wonderful. Would you like to comment? Comments are only not on the merit of the issue. Councillor, I'll now move to the determination of items requiring separate discussion, and I will start on my left with Councillor Peary, please.
We'll start with number 5, as well as number 6.
Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll take 2 and 3 in addition to those 2. Would you like to pull 3? Okay, then number 2, and then I'll let the mayor pull 3. Thank you.
Thank you for deferring to the mayor. Councillor Abel.
Number 3.
I think it's going to be a long night.
Thank you. I'll take number 1. 5 was already taken. I'd like to pull forward 2, please.
Mayor Daw, we only have items 7, 8, and 9 remaining. Would you like to pull
3.
any?
I'm pulling 3.
Yeah, I know.
I haven't pulled that yet officially. 9, please.
9 as well?
I'd like to speak to that.
Councillor Maracas, you're left with 2, either 7 or 8.
I'll try to keep the meeting going smoothly, so I won't take anything for this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just to repeat, items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 9 were pulled. Seeing no further concerns, I'll now ask for a motion to adopt those items that not require a separate discussion. Councillor Abel and Councillor Tom, all those in favor? Carried. We now move on to delegations. Our first delegation this evening is Ms. Stewart. She will be representing the residents of Cousins Drive. Just for your information, you've been given 5 minutes. If you need more, please ask council.
We might need more. No,
Sorry?
we might need more. We should be fine. We got called in last minute. The spokesperson who was going to be here on that. Oh, sorry.
If you don't mind just stating your name and
Yes.
your address for us before you begin.
Okay. My name is Sunny Matheson Davies of 51 Metcalf Street.
Emily Stewart, 68 Cousins Drive.
Here. We are standing in on behalf of our neighborhood tonight on our request for a stop sign down at the corner of Wells, the intersection of Wells and Cousins Drive. You want to just say this bit?
So this is our 3rd time here in the past 8 years. So we're definitely persistent, and we'd like to say we're going to go away if this doesn't go through, but we're going to be back, so you're going to get to know our faces. We quickly just want to touch upon the study that was done. We do really appreciate having Jamal come out again for the study. We quickly just want to make a couple points. The day the study was done, it was raining, so the pedestrian traffic, like pouring rain, so the pedestrian traffic was lower than it normally is. Similarly, the cars weren't as frequent, and the park wasn't being used because of the rain. Also, the speed warning sign had already been put up, so we found that the sign did work in slowing down the traffic, but you can see that from the top of the hill, so the average speed would have been affected by that. Also, we were looking at the criteria for a 3-way stop sign, and we saw that 3 accidents per year also is a consideration for a 3-way stop. And in the report, it said that there were no accidents reported in the last 3 years. As a resident that lives 20
Three houses
three
from the-
houses up, there definitely have been accidents. So we've called the police just to say, are they not being reported? I remember 2 in the last year, a severe T-bone and a motorcycle accident. So
Just quickly, today I got a phone call from Staff Sergeant Dave Mitchell from Newmarket, very nice gentleman who did explain the criteria to us for reporting accidents. There's 3 ways an accident, a residential accident can be reported. If there's a fatality, the police on site would report it through their office. There's entering a report through the Ministry of Transportation, or the third option now, of course, which I knew to expect, was a voluntary online option to report an incident, which he said, of course, it's very easy to fall through the system because people just forget to, and accidents don't get reported. So there have definitely, even though you may not see it on paper and any research that you have done, there are accidents happening for sure.
So we wanted just to give you a few facts. You guys have seen the reports. We wanted to tell you a few things about Cousins Drive that you may not know. So on one block of Cousins Drive, there are 20 kids under the age of 10, 95% of those kids being under the age of 7. So this isn't a problem that's going to go away. We have young kids, and I think 75% are under the age of 5.
And that's on the northeast block between Wells and Edward. And every single one of those properties is a full-line property. There's no sidewalk on the north side of the street either. So the northeast corner, there's no sidewalk, as well as the southwest side, there is no sidewalk. So if you were trying to get any sort of passage from one side, from Yonge to the other, you'd have to walk along the northwest side and essentially jaywalk south to the next sidewalk, where the park is at the bottom of Wells, to continue on west. There is absolutely no safe passage for children, even the students from the high school around, like we are in a school zone. It's just shocking that it has gone on this long, and there is just, forget cars and speed and whatever. With the family sizes that are in the neighborhood now, we feel it is just imperative that there is safe passage for us and our children.
So in speaking about the traffic that goes by, we have 3 buses from 3 different schools stop at the intersection of Cousins and Wells, and you have to run over, try to grab your kid, and then run back. You're also at the bottom part of the hill, so the speed coming down is the fastest at that point. When we spoke to School Bus City about getting this bus stop, we had concerns because you did have to cross the street without a sidewalk to get to the bus, and their response was they understood that it was not a safe passage to the bus. Their concern was not a safe passage to the bus, but to provide a safe stop and to speak to our town council about getting a safer passage to the bus.
You have 1 minute remaining. If you need some time, perhaps Mayor Dow may want to move a motion to waive the procedural bylaw, or are you nearly finished?
Yep, we're nearly finished.
Ish.
Is Council okay with waiving the procedural bylaw to allow the presentation to continue? Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Well. The other safety concern we have, again, is the park. So there is a public park across the street. Recently, the Cousins family has donated benches and garbage cans to that. People aren't using it because you do have to run across the street. We know that putting a stop.
This is not part of our show.
The microphones are still working, so just keep
Great.
going.
We know this is not going to stop traffic, but just to make note, Cousins Drive is the only street in the neighborhood that has no stop sign. So, and it is a through street to Yonge Street. So we do get a lot of traffic from GO trains. They come down Edward and zip down Cousins to hit Yonge Street. So we are the only one without a stop sign. Thus, we feel like we get more traffic because of that.
And without a doubt, the largest per capita of young children
in the
neighborhood without sidewalks as well.
So if you go into our area, obviously it's an older area. You see that typically the demographics are young families or older residents, and that's turning over. And the frustrating thing is that if you go into the newer subdivisions, because of the planning that's done, there's a lot of, everywhere you kind of look, there's a stop sign, or I know when I drive through, it's stop, 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 and we feel that just because we're in an older area that the houses are more established, we don't feel that we should be penalized with the lack of 1 sidewalks and 2 stop signs.
Also, our neighborhood is a training zone for young drivers. So on top of the traffic that we already are receiving, we get a tremendous amount of new drivers who, again, it can be a concern with, well, the obvious that they're new to the driving world and they are operating massive vehicles that they are so busy and nervous on their tests and so forth that we would like them to be able to stop.
We also get, because Edward is more of a commercial street, we get a lot of larger vehicles and trucks coming through Cousins Drive that barrel along. We feel like a stop sign halfway would really help before they gun it to go up the hill. So we feel really that the pros of this is it will reduce the speed of traffic. It will provide a safe place to cross. It would be a more pedestrian-friendly neighborhood and potentially save a life. I think if you guys come, I know we were really lucky to have Mayor Daw come in and take a look, and we really appreciate that. But on a regular basis, you kind of just hear a lot of moms yelling, stop, slow down. It's crazy, really.
It really does, and especially in the summertime when we, after the bus, we let the kids run off some steam at the park. And it's sad and scary at the same time in that we are not down in the park enjoying the time with our kids. We all congregate up on the sidewalk and almost look like a marching band, like a whole line of officers there to protect our children from the ones that do come screaming down and the ones that you see are just driving down, and it's the same old thing. They're on their phones, they're texting. We could go on and on and on about all of the things that go on that we see. At the end of the day, we feel it is imperative that we stand here and fight for our right for safe passage in our neighborhood for our families.
The speed sign did, the speed tracking sign did make a difference. We did notice a considerable slowdown to the sign, and then once they passed the sign, we noticed they sped up again up the hill. But if you, are we supposed to speak? So if you look at the report that was given, if it gives some alternatives to our plea for a stop sign. So we say council may wish to implement a three-way stop control at Wells Street and Cousins. If so, the following recommendations would allow for staff to proceed with this direction. A three-way stop sign control at the intersection of Wells Street and Cousins Drive be approved, and that a bylaw to implement three-way stop sign control at the intersection of Wells Street and Cousins Drive be introduced, and that pedestrians must yield to traffic caution signs be removed upon implementation of the three-way stop sign control at the intersection of Wells Street and Cousins Drive. And that notice of council's decision to be sent to Aurora residents.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Council, can I get a motion to receive and refer to item 3? Mayor Daw, Councillor Gartner. Any questions of the delegates? Mayor Daw?
I don't have a question. I just want to thank you for coming out. It can be intimidating on that side of the microphone. I know I've been there myself. So thank you very much for coming out. You did a good job.
Thanks very
Thank
much.
you for having us.
Councillor Gartner?
I also thank you for coming out because I was 100% in favor of the staff recommendation, but I think I need to go and have another look.
Thank you very much.
Any other members of council? And thank you very much. The item's been pulled and we'll deal with it shortly.
Thank you for your time.
Council, we have no presentations by the advisory committee chairs, so if we could move towards the consideration of items requiring separate discussion. Obviously, we have delegates here who are interested in item 3 as well as the clear bags, which is item 5. Can I get a motion to move 3 and 5 forward? Councillor Maracas, Councillor Abel, all those in favor? Mayor Daw, you pulled item 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rather than put the staff recommendation on the floor, I would like to put the alternative on the floor, which is to implement the stop sign. And I can go to Mr. Clerk just to make sure we're doing that correctly, if I may.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. Certainly, there's no obligation for members of council to move the staff recommendation, and the alternate was listed in the report. So it's absolutely fine and actually ideal to, if that's the direction, to move the alternate if that's the issue that you want debated.
Thank you, sir.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Marcus.
Thank you, sir. I was out there in the fall, or seems a long time ago now, doesn't it? And, well, I appreciate the work that staff put in with respect to the analysis they did, and Jamal was out there a number of times and has also done a fair amount of work around it. And although it doesn't meet the warrants, I think it meets the common sense warrant, which is Cousins Drive is a straight shot from Yonge over to Edward, yeah. I'll use my street names. And the other issue is that, as the delegates mentioned, the stop sign, or pardon me, the sidewalk is on the south side up to the west side of Wells Street, then crosses over to the north side. So I think it's a reasonable request to put a three-way stop sign there. There is a single stop sign coming down Wells, so we're at T intersections at Cousins. That is a fairly substantial school bus stop. There's a number of school buses to stop there. I think it's a safety issue, and I'm very pleased that they got in touch with us to request that, and I'm happy to move that.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. I have Councillor Maracas, then Councillor Tom, and then Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just have a few comments. Just like Mayor Daw mentioned, I know that the staff report doesn't recommend this, but I do feel that we need to protect our residents, and I think a stop sign in this area is very much needed. I travel the area a lot, and driving through to get to Edward, there's a lot of traffic. You have GW Williams is right there. A lot of students at the end of the day are walking through there, so there's a lot of pedestrian traffic. Also the young kids and everything. So I just think this is a good thing to put there, and I'm in full support of this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maracas. And because of the technical difficulties, we're not able to put the alternative recommendation on the screen, but we are dealing with the alternative. I have Councillor Tom next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you guys for coming out. I actually, the last time I was at the intersection, it was during the election, and I was canvassing, and I actually think that I may have run into one of you while I was there. Yeah, and the bus was coming, and people were getting picked up, and so, like Mayor Daw and Councillor Maracas, I'm in support of this as well. So I won't repeat what they've said, and I won't repeat what you've said, because I think that you guys put a lot of work into it as well, and certainly living on the street, you know the implications of not having one. So one of the things I'd like to point out, though, is on the page 4 of the report, it mentions that it says there's an opportunity to provide a safe and continuous route for pedestrians on Cousins Drive at this location. However, there is no policy that supports installation of a three-way stop at location for the purpose of pedestrian access improvements, and I would probably include safety in that as well. So I don't mean to put, I just want to comment. I don't want to put anything on the floor, obviously, but maybe something we look at as council, that perhaps those considerations are taken when looking at stop sign locations in the future. And certainly they're kind of the reason why we're bringing this forward and voting on it, so I thought that it might be important. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tom. Councillor Abel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think in the last election, in a lot of neighborhoods we went, I'm hearing the same, that there are safety concerns with vehicular traffic and neighborhoods. And so I did bring a motion forward about some cushions, and I'm hoping that we're going to see a report on that, because I think once we see the stimulus here, I think the other residents are going to remind us that this isn't the only neighborhood that has concerns. And this is plain and simple. As the mayor said, it may not meet the warrants, but it certainly is a concern, and it makes sense. I recall in the Aurora, Dick Illingsworth doing his bouquet and brickbats, and he often...
You're dating yourself.
No, but he often referred to Cousins Drive. He said, and to those guys that speed down Cousins Drive. And of course, he would throw a big brick to them. He would say, It's been a concern for a long time. And it's funny, it's usually residents that know the shortcuts through, and they're the ones that are plowing through. The warrants don't show that. It shows 85% of the people are going at the right speed, but I know there's people that really step on it. We've seen it in other areas. So I hope there's some signage. I don't know if the delegates mentioned signage, Mr. Chair. Is there signs, pedestrians or school zones or anything that goes along with that?
Would you like to direct that to Mr. Simonovskis?
I would,
or Ms.
if
Van
you would,
Loon?
Mr. Chair.
Simonovskis?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to deal with some issues with the building right now, but can you just repeat the question?
Sure. I was asking that if the stop sign is approved adopted by council, that are there signs that are saying it's new, school zone, any of those signage that we could bring to the attention of drivers as well?
Typically, when we install a new sign, we do indicate with new, a new installation. So there is a period of time when a stop sign ahead would be installed as a temporary indication of the change of the traffic control.
I know in other areas we have children at play because there's a park there. And I did also put a motion to restrict the number of signs going up and down, but.
Are you conflicted right now?
I am somewhat conflicted. I'm just mentioning in case those might be adopted as well. So I'll be in support of the option on the table here.
Any further comment? Councillor Gardner?
Thank you, and I think maybe Mr. Simonovskis, you might have been out of the room when Councillor Tom was speaking. So my question has to do with page 1, second paragraph under background, which also relates to his question. The town supports active transportation initiatives providing safer and uninterrupted routes for pedestrians. And then it says on page 4, which was Councillor Tom's comment, town parks and sidewalks under that first large section on page 4. There is an opportunity to provide a safe and continuous route for pedestrians on Cousins Drive at this location. So this all has to do with the sidewalks, making it safer, promoting active transportation. Could you make a comment on that? Because it says, well, it is in our policy, but it doesn't say that we had any intention to do this on Cousins.
Mr. Simonovskis?
Certainly through Mr. Chair. Our current policies are based on traffic volumes and traffic counts with regards to meeting the warrants. So as much as this is a good idea, we don't have a policy that actually supports or that captures this type of request. We are looking at modifying our policy to be a little more comprehensive with regards to active transportation, but at the moment, I don't have any mechanism to make a recommendation to install a stop sign here, hence the reason for recommending no stop sign.
Thank you. Follow-up, Mr. Chair. But we do have a policy that we want to have continuous sidewalks in the town, and I'm assuming that means residential areas as well. Just so having a sidewalk on the south side and part of a street in the north side, that would fall under our policy to fully sidewalk the town?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, the sidewalk, the connectivity for the sidewalks is more related to installation of sidewalks. It doesn't actually cover cover stop signs or other pedestrian type requirements. It's mostly to close the gaps where the sidewalks don't exist.
Thank you. I believe option 2 is on the table. So when we address that, can we also address these concerns about how we can make this area safer? Even though we may not have an official policy, but we certainly have an intention to provide safe streets and safe walking areas.
Mr. Simonovskis?
Through you, Mr. Chair, is the intent to make it safer related to additional signage or to the stop sign specifically?
I don't know what the intention is around the table, but my intention would be to make it safer in any way possible, so whatever that takes. And then also through Mr. Chair to Mr. Simonovskis for the information of the delegates. Thank you for coming. Putting in stop signs doesn't always accomplish what we hope. Can you speak to that point?
Mr. Simonauskas?
Through you, Mr. Chair, so our current policy encourages stop sign use for the control of traffic, and based on meeting the warrants that are outlined in the policy. Stop signs aren't necessarily intended to slow down traffic, and often there's a request for a stop sign for the purpose of trying to reduce traffic speed. So it's really trying to bring a policy forward that captures the traffic volume concerns with regards to safe passage across intersections, as well as looking at the pedestrian perspective of whether or not the stop sign is there for traffic to provide safe pedestrian crossing. So that's something we'd like to look at in a future policy, but right now we don't have any mechanism to use pedestrian priority as a decision-making factor.
Thank you, Mr. Simonauskas. And I have a sense that if it's not sufficient, I'm sure the residents will be back anytime soon to share what the current conditions are. Any further discussion, Council? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of the recommendation on the screen? Opposed? Motion's carried. Congratulations. Persistence paid off. The clerk just reminded me, it is subject to council approval. All GC recommendations go to council next week for ratification. Councillor Peary, you pulled item 5, the Clear Bag Program. Mayor Daw and Councillor Abel have seconded it. Councillor Peary, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Simonauskas. Mr. Simonauskas? I said Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Simonauskas. What is Aurora's diversion rate for our garbage at this point in time?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's a 54 to 56% based on our post processing numbers. Those are the numbers that the region provides us.
So how does the region get those numbers? Do they pool in strictly Aurora's garbage, or are those regional numbers?
So the region, what happens is each municipality's waste and recyclable material is weighed in as it enters the recovery and transfer facilities. And based on any waste that comes out of the recycling stream through the processing, that then is also added to the total waste, and it's distributed evenly amongst all the municipalities.
So then that isn't an Aurora-centric number, or is that is strictly Aurora's number?
Aurora's number is based on the tonnage that we collect at the curb minus the residual that's left within the stream that the region has to deduct from the total recyclable volumes. So we we divert 62% at the curb, and then there's a reduction based on how much of that recycled material couldn't be fully captured when they're actually separating it and bundling it for sale.
I might be missing, if I'm wrong, please let me know, but from what you're saying, it sounds like when we go forward, we're using an Aurora number to figure out how much the first percentage is, and then for the secondary percentage, it's a regional number that gets redistributed, but it's not an Aurora-centric number? Or am I just misunderstanding?
Mr. Simonauskas, can you clarify? My understanding is that the first number is calculated based on what we've picked up at the curb, and then when they get it back to the facility and take a look at it, some of that material gets rejected, and that's the reduction in the number. Am I correct?
Correct.
So it's always Aurora's number?
Yes, it's a number for each municipality. Each municipality has its own curbside collection rate.
Right.
And then whatever garbage that's in that recyclable stream that's pulled out, that is distributed equally to all the municipalities, so they each get a reduction in percentage based on that.
So we don't know how Aurora is doing on a diversion basis. We are just left with a number that the region redistributes based on a percentage.
Correct.
So I would feel more comfortable if in our methodologies we track this on strictly an Aurora basis, if this is making sense to everybody else around the table. You know, if we were to look at garbage that Aurora collects, and then from there, you know, we go through a sorting from time to time to see what our diversion rates actually are. You know, you pick a few bags here and there, and you get a good idea of how diversion rates are working in our municipality just by doing spot checks like that. Because to me, we're looking at this information, it's getting redistributed back to Aurora from York Region, and I'm not certain that those numbers are accurate for Aurora. And I have no way of dictating whether or not that those numbers that we're looking at are an accurate representation of Aurora's portion of this. So that to me is one concern. As I stated last time when this first came to us, I'm not sure how this, I'm just not personally confident moving forward that the processes we have in place will make an overall impact. If we have the ability to put out black garbage bags in the future, and inside or on the outside of those black garbage bags, we're putting it in the clear plastic bags, I'm not sure what that's doing. So on the whole, this is something I applaud the direction we're going in, but I don't think that there's the necessary numbers behind it to back it up for Aurora. So I won't be able to vote in favor of this at this point in time, unless there's some comments made around the table that let me know that I'm grossly incorrect in my understanding of the system.
Thank you, Councillor Piri. I have Councillor Maracas next, then Councillor Abel, then Councillor Daw. Mayor Daw, sorry, my apologies. My sincere apologies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a couple of comments. I'm just going to keep it real brief and real simple. I've been in contact with many residents, I'm sure as all of you have, through emails and through phone. And I've yet to find one resident that's spoken to me that is in favor of this program. I share those same concerns as many of the residents that I've dealt with. Personally, I don't see the merit in this program. I don't see the need for this program, and therefore I won't be supporting this motion tonight. And that's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maracas. I have Councillor Abel up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be supporting this. I think it's good for our diversion rate. I believe it has an overall impact to our collection cost. It creates a win-win. We save money and we create a healthier environment. I know there is resistance by many residents that they do not want to change the bags. They want to use the dark bag, and they are not in favor of a clear bag for many reasons. And one thing that I hear often is that it's going to cost more. And I think the report bears out that it will not cost more. In the end, it will probably increase the diversion rate, and then we are sending less to be incinerated, which reduces our cost. The other, I hear other people opposing it. So what I would like to do is be able to assure our residents that there is no increased cost. But I have a feeling that those that are not in favor will never, aren't going to weigh a decision on anything apart from that they don't choose to use a bag. The fact is that a diversion rate does go up, and you're dealing with less dangerous materials in incineration and getting rid of waste. And if we look at Markham, they clearly move up 10% in their waste diversion, which is good, and which means we're incinerating less toxic heavy metals. And I think that makes us a better community. I don't know if I can convince anyone otherwise. I have talked to several residents about this, and when they say it's going to cost more because now the garbage collectors are going to come down and open up each bag and poke through, and they can't be convinced otherwise. I am not going to waste my time saying that the pickup rates are going to be exactly the same. If they see a paint can or your recyclables in a clear garbage bag, that they will not pick it up. People, we see it in every aspect of our lives. I see people blowing leaves onto the street. I see people, when they clear their driveway with the windrow, they throw the snow onto the street. And it's basically a shrug of the shoulder. Well, they didn't know. It's people speed, people run stop signs. It's a matter of educating and making people do what's good for the community. If someone wants to put their, and I see people with grass cutting, and I see it often, where they have bags on their lawnmowers, and I often think, where's that going to go? They don't want to rake the lawn or put their clippings along the lawn, so they're going to empty that bag somewhere, and I have a feeling it isn't in their backyard. I can be pretty sure that that's going into clear garbage bags. But it does illustrate that unless people are consciously aware that they're doing something that's not allowed, they can hide it in a bag, and no one sees it, no one's aware, and we can shrug our shoulders. So this program, if you want to put your grass clippings into a bag, then you've got to empty it into several bags and tie it up neat so none of the clippings come out. And if you want to do that, then you're consciously saying, I know what I'm doing is wrong, but I'm going to hide it. And they can do the same with the paint can. They can put it into one of those bags. So I think that's why this works, is because if they're throwing their pop cans and things into a green garbage bag, then it demonstrates that if they're not going to be held accountable, then they'll do it the way they are accustomed to doing, and not getting part of the waste program. So, Mr. Chair, I know we said we should educate, and I know that we also said we should bring in a soft way of initializing it. And I'm a councillor that went and saw this program take effect in Markham, and so that's why I'm saying that this can be done very slowly, where you roll it out, and before long, just like we see in Markham, everyone does it, and you see the effect of it. I think it takes, I think we should be able to put that on a trial basis rather than just nix it at this stage right now. People have a very strong opinion about this, and I've had people yell at me that this is wrong and that I shouldn't support it. And when they say their reasons, I cannot explain to them that it's not going to cost more, and it's good for the environment, and it's good for the health of our air and what we do. I also think that waste is an important challenge that we're going to have. I think the region will somewhere down the road say, okay, you're all going to do it. I think there's a lot of information that is not being properly given to our residents. And perhaps that's part of the reason why there's so much resistance.
Thank you, Councillor Abel. If I may, I'd like to go to Mr. Simonauskas. Councillor Abel talked about the cost of the program, and I know you've done up a chart on page 8, and I think that it would be good for not just members of council, but for residents as well. to, if you would just take us through that chart with respect to the clear bags in terms of the costs, the perceived savings, and so forth.
Certainly through Mr. Chair. So on page 8 at the very top, there's a table that speaks to NPV, which is net present value for town costs and for all costs. And what we've tried to provide here is a comparison for what the impact is to our direct costs for the town for the operation, as well as direct community costs, excluding any costs that the region may have to bear as well. So it's really focusing on costs of the town plus the residents. The status quo is our current program, which is indicating there is 62% diversion. That's the number from the most recent year. It varies between 60 and 64%. We seem to have topped out at about 64%. And the expected diversion based on the residual that is pulled out of the stream during processing is 54%. The second column speaks to bag tags, which is a program that we don't have. The cost we expect to be very similar because for the most part, the limit of 3 bags that we have is more or less complied with. So there is a small percentage that may require bag tags, but it would be a nominal impact. The third line is our clear bag program, where we see a nominal reduction in the overall cost this is over a 10-year period, and a nominal increase in the overall cost. And this was to account for materials that don't belong in either the black bag or the recyclable streams that would have to be taken to a recovery facility directly by the residents. So we've tried to factor in some additional costs that the resident would have to incur to manage waste that isn't supposed to be in the garbage to begin with. And of course, the last 2 columns are just changes in our current program, whether it's collection every 3 weeks or the extreme option of no waste collection, in which case the resident would be responsible for essentially a zero waste program where any waste would have to be taken to a facility directly.
Thank you, Mr. Simonovskis. I have Mayor Daw next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Perhaps we could just first mention for anybody who might be watching online is that we've been having power problems at Town Hall. So it's been on and off. So if we're back on stream, Mr. Clerk. Everything's hunky-dory? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, Mr. Simonovskis, I was somewhat confused by your response to Councillor Peary in terms of the calculating the diversion rate. So if I can take a stab at it and let me know if I'm incorrect. In the N6 is in the contract for collecting the garbage. Each municipality has their garbage and recycling weighed at the transfer station. So if Aurora's total was 100 tons, from a curbside perspective or the weigh-in at the transfer stations, 61 tons would be in recycling, 49 would be in solid waste. Is that correct?
Correct, to you, Mr. Chair.
So what happens then when it goes into the MRF or the material recycling facility is that if there is garbage which is found in the recycling material, that gets proportioned back, so it's taken out of the recycling calculation and gets proportioned back to the individual towns. So it may, and it's probably the only, well, it is, I would think the only way you could possibly do it unless you had a MRF for each particular town.
That's correct.
So it may be higher or it may be lower for any particular town, but we would all suffer from the same.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that. So I'm comfortable with the numbers you have. Even if we go with the high number, which is 61, Markham, when they started their project, was at 71 and managed to move it to 81. So I don't want to belabor all the things that have been said here tonight. I know that it's interesting, there's 3 people in the audience this evening. I know the views of 2 of them. One is in favor, one's against, which is pretty much mirroring what's happening in my house. So there's and you can guess where the other party sits. And I appreciate that some people are not happy about the process. I understand that, I get it. I happen to think that environmentally it's the right thing for us to be doing, and that's why I brought it forward in the first place, and that's why I'm supporting it.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. I have Councillor Tom next, then Councillor Kim, and then Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I had a couple of questions, and then I'll make some comments. Let me just find here. Now, can I be corrected or brought up to speed, I suppose? This is purely for residential. Can I ask that to Mr. Simonovskis?
Mr. Simonovskis?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do have some commercial that we collect along Industrial and Yonge Street. So those smaller business units do fit within our program, and it would apply to them as well.
Thank you. I'm just trying to find where I have these notes. So I'm looking at the financial implications that it talks about the Vision Quest Environmental, the consulting costs, and that we received a grant. So in total, this year, for implementing this initiative, what are we looking at in terms of cost? May I ask that through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Simonovskis?
Mr. Simonovskis?
Through you, Mr. Chair, with regards to actual costs spent, I believe we're about 50% there, and Dave may comment on that, but the program essentially is based on Vision Quest's role of providing information with regards to the research that we were requesting earlier on in the program, communicating, attending the open house, facilitating some of the other conversations we've been having with the community, and really working with the retail sector to prepare them, educate them, and help with the transition from their stock from a black bag to a clear bag.
Thank you. So at the top end, we're talking, I'm just trying, like 50 grand?
Mr. Simonovskis?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So based on the consulting assignment of $33,000 and the grant of $15,000, the net of that would be an impact to the town of about $15,000, $16,000.
And that includes even through the soft launch till we go in October. Through you, Mr. Chair. I'm just looking for a rough estimate.
Yes.
Okay. So we're talking about 20 grand tops.
Correct.
And and through you, if I may, Mr. Chair, what are the potential cost savings with regard to diversion?
Mr. Simonovskis?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the cost savings they're nominal in the grand scheme of the program, and they're presented in that table on page 8. So you're looking at over a 10-year period of just over $100,000.
Thank you. I just want to make that clear that this isn't costing the town anything. If in the long run, it will actually save us money. Nominal, as you mentioned, but it will be a cost saving. So because we've all had the concerns from residents being relayed to us, and I wanted to make sure that that wasn't one that was founded in fact, because in fact it's going to, we're going to make 80 grand or save 80 grand. The concerns from residents certainly need to be addressed, but as Councillor Abel pointed out, a lot of those concerns that I've heard are, people will say, well, what's the point, because you're allowed to have 3 opaque bags inside the clear bag. So what's the point in doing it at all? But as Councillor Abel pointed out, if you're currently using a black bag and putting non-sanctioned items into the bag, under the clear bag system, you'll then have to go through a process of doing that twice. Essentially, you're going to have to go, as he mentioned, I'm going to put my paint can inside of another bag and then put it inside of the clear bag. And the idea, I guess, is during that process, someone's going to say, wait a minute, why don't I just go down to the facility where I'm supposed to actually put this in the first place? There's one at Elgin Mills, just west of the 404. It's a great place. Go down there, check it out. And all that stuff, I believe, is free. Garbage costs money, but everything else is free. You just got to drive down and do it. And so, but people don't do it. Unfortunately, most people, or I don't want to speak for most people, I suppose, but some people certainly don't do it. They take advantage of the fact that they can slip one in. So I think that this is a very interesting way to make people consciously aware that, okay, I've been doing this for 10 years, and most people in Aurora don't do this, but there are people that do. And that's borne out in the fact that we do have, when they go to the MRF, I think that's what you called it, I've never heard that before, but they go to the MRF and they find this kind of stuff in the trash. And so it's happening. So I think this is a good way to get people to be conscious of that, and to maybe they'll decide where to put their grass clippings, as Councillor Abel said, or they'll decide that they can take it down to the to the waste collection center. I'm not even sure what it's called, down at Elgin Mills there. And I think there's got to be more throughout the region. So yeah, that's one of the big ones I heard was that, well, if you're going to have opaque bags inside, then why do it at all? But that's why you do it. And the opaque bags do allow for someone who's concerned about, say, privacy or whatever to insert something that should be going into the garbage bag in the first place, but they don't want it to be seen. It still gives them that latitude. So if they're concerned about it, they can do that. One of the things, and this is just an example, and I think that people can probably relate to this. So although I'm a bit younger than most, with the exception of Councillor Peary that's at this table, so these are a bit more fresh in my mind.
Point of order, I'd like to point out that Councillor Tom is younger than I am. So
I rule in favor of Councillor Tom because that's not a point of order.
You have a gathering of people at your home, and it goes into the night, and you're cleaning up the next day. And we've all done this, or at least I've done it, and I'm first to admit it, in the past, where you decide, and you might be a bit foggy the next morning, and you may have a few hornets in the helmet, and you might say, you know what, I'm going to put everything into one bag because I don't want to spend time cleaning up. I'm just going to put it all in one bag, and then I'll just throw it on the side of the road. You throw all your recyclables into it. People have done, I've done that. This would stop that from happening, because you can't. Unless you, again, going to compartmentalize that and go, well, I'll put it into this bag and then I'll tie that up and put it into the other bag. No one would do that. They just throw it into the bin or they go return their empty. So again, I think that this is a move in the right direction. And I think that, we have to recognize that there's concerns, and I think that, education on this is key. There's definitely going to be someone walking into a Canadian Tire when this gets implemented, and he's going to not have seen anything to do with this, and he's going to go, where is the damn garbage bags? I can't find them. All I got is these clear ones. Where's the brown ones? So there's going to be people so we do have to make sure that we get that information out as expeditiously as possible and to as many people as we possibly can. But at the end of the day, this is something that we've heard the evidence. It's something that has worked in other communities. It's probably the way in which most communities are going to be moving in the future. And so I think that we should get on board while we, as early as possible, and that way we can stop as much waste that shouldn't be going to the wrong place from getting there. And so at this point, I'll be supporting this.
Thank you, Councillor Tom. Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Simonovsky. Item 2, we're talking about harmonization of waste and with the N6, the other N6 municipalities. And how do you harmonize everything if we implement the clear bag program and none of the other 6 are? Because then it forces the GFL employees to work a certain way in Aurora, and then they go to King. They're working a different way. So how does harmonization work in that scenario?
Mr. Simonovskis?
Certainly through you, Mr. Chair. So there's a number of elements within the bylaws that we have opportunity to harmonize, some of them easier than others. A good example of an easy harmonization exercise would be around the size of the blue bins or the size of the garbage cans that are available or that are going to be permitted. With regards to the question of how many bags that we can pick up or whether they're clear or black bags, currently I don't believe there's 2 of the N6 partners that have the same bag limits or the same policies around bag tags and the cost of the tags. So right now it is quite unique for each of the 6 municipalities. The harmonization exercise would really look at sort of the low-hanging fruit to harmonize. Some of the things may just never become common. You may have one municipality say that is fixed on a 1 bag limit, and they may not move off of that, or a 3 bag limit. So there's going to be challenges regardless of how we approach it. With regards to the effect, in particular with the garbage bags, with the effect on the contractor, it's really just as they're currently practicing, where when collecting within Aurora, they know it's a 3 bag limit, although we don't have any way of enforcing it. Then they go into Newmarket, and it's a different bag limit that they do have a mechanism to enforce. So it's just creating that, that uniqueness to each municipality. So I don't think we'll actually harmonize around the bag limits or the types of bags, but there are other elements that we probably could harmonize on.
Councillor Kim?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. I think that's where I have a little bit of hiccup, because if I was a GFL employee and I'm in King, Newmarket, and I don't have to check the bags to see whether they're in conformity with the contents, then I go to Aurora, and they're forced to kind of spot check to see whether they're following regulations. Heck, in a cold winter day, I'm not going to open up, or a hot summer day, open up a garbage bag and check to see what's in there. I didn't have to check in King or Newmarket, and all of a sudden I'm in Aurora and I have to check. Chances are I'm going to check as little as possible.
I'm not sure if this is a point of order, but no one's opening up garbage bags.
I thought part of the...
Mr. Chair, Mayor Dodd, we'll get Mr. Simonovskis to clarify that point after Councillor Kim is finished.
Sure. I mean, you can clarify. Maybe I'm mistaken here, but I thought that the GFL employees were the arbiters, or they make the decision in terms of how much certain contents are in the bag.
Mr. Simonovskis, could you sort of explain how the process would work, just to avoid any confusion?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair, and if I may, I'll couch it with an example as well. So the whole intent of this program is to create or increase social awareness, and the idea of enforcement is really a nominal notion as to a blatant disregard for the bylaw. So if you have a GFL employee who's currently moving down the street with his black bags, his only test for non-compliance is if the bag's weight exceeds the current 50-pound limit. That's his only test, so it's a physical test. If, however, with a clear bag, there's some obvious contaminants within the waste, whether it's grass clippings or an old laptop, it's very clear, very easy to do. But his role is not to really detail inspect the bag. It's just one more social reminder of our responsibility as residents of our town. And if I may, just to give an example, we don't have clear bag in the community that I live, but just to test the effect, I actually used clear bags to see how it was. And it does have an emotional trigger. When you fill up a bag with garbage and you grab it and hold it up and it's clear and you see all your stuff from the kitchen in there, you think about what you're putting in there, because now that's actually visible for everybody. So that's what we're trying to get at, is that social awareness, that there's a conscious thought process, as some of the councillors mentioned, that what I'm putting in here now has to more align with the program, because I'm part of this community as well. So that's really the driver, not the enforcement piece.
But Mr. Simonovskis, specific to the point, GFL will not be opening up garbage bags.
Correct.
Councillor Kim?
Thank you for clarifying that. I think this whole thing is an issue of trust and information. I think the town has done a reasonably good job of communicating through various open houses and informationals and the publications in the various newspapers. I myself, throughout the last few years, it could be incorrect, but when I read or see the news on TV, I hear that all the recyclables are really not being recycled. They're for various reasons, and there's kind of a feeling of an issue of trust, where we're putting all this effort into recycling, but is it really going where it should be going? And I think I know someone said that those who do not want to recycle or be environmentally friendly will never be. Myself, I think I'm almost there. I make an effort to go to Newmarket to put all my electronics and other toxic things on my own time. But for some reason, there's obviously there's been some I've been either not doing my homework, or I've been misinformed, or just not getting it from the right source. And being in council, if I'm still ignorant of some of these things, then I can imagine what the public feel as well. I think I'll eventually turn over
and I understand it, that it's an educational and it's a kind of a psychological thing. I think that's the first time I've heard that, and I get it. I think I need a few months or a year to kind of fully grasp it and put my trust in that the diversion rate really is the diversion rate as opposed to what some big industrial complex is telling us. So overall, I'm not quite there yet, so I don't think I'll be on board. But in principle, I'm all for the environment, and I practice all the environmental measures that's out there, but I'm just not there yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I found this very complicated for myself and very complicated for the residents. I think that I will be voting in favor of it because, as it was said, this is the right thing to do for the environment, and we all know the environment needs our help. I was glad to see in the motion from staff, the recommendations, that there's going to be 2 more open houses and 2 more online opportunities. The thing that one of the things I really had a lot of trouble with was the educational process, and I know that we tasked staff to do the education program internally to save money, and I think staff did a really good job with it, but I think there were some things that were missing, and I'm going to put together a list for next week. But I think there needs to be more education. Also, it's all through the report that the residents are going to kind of take the hit on this because they are now going to have to go up to, well, East Gwillimbury or wherever and take their electronics, etc. It's not true. Unless there happens to be community recycling days, and there are so many of those in the spring and summer and fall, but there's nothing in the winter, and I think that. That's not true either. Sorry, where? They went in January. My apology. So they need to be available through the winter. I don't know if there's anything scheduled for March or April, but I would like to see something. It says consumers are going to have to take a more active role in supporting sustainable waste management. And that's not a bad thing, but when we're looking at saving money, well, we're actually saving a bit of money, but one of the reasons we're saving that money is because we're expecting the residents to take their electronics, paint, etc., up to the bona fide recycling depots for that. Through you, Mr. Chair, is there a charge for that to drop the
Mr. Simonovskis.
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, not for recycling materials.
So what, I'm sorry, there is something in the report that there is a charge for. What would that be? Through you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Simonovskis.
Through you, Mr. Chair, some of the contaminants that we would find that would be charged as, say, construction waste. People that may want to put some renovation material into the black bag, if that has to go to a depot, there would be probably a minimum charge for that. Usually it's a minimum plus a minimum or an exceedance of a weight based on what they're delivering it with.
Councillor Gardner.
Some is free. Thank you. I've only had the fortune to have everything be free of what I've taken, and I thought that was great. On page 10 of the report, there is a part about placing broken glass in, I believe it's into the clear bags, wrapped up broken glass. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Simonovskis. That's 1, 2, 3, the fourth bullet point.
Mr. Simonovskis, can you speak to the broken glass comment?
Certainly through you, Mr. Chair. So, and this was very good feedback that we actually received from some of the survey work and open house, where residents were concerned that if they're putting broken glass, say, within a cardboard container to protect, the collection driver, would that be deemed as a recyclable that's in the clear bag, and why is it in there and they're not going to pick it up? So I think really what we need to focus on is that's a good practice. I mean, it's important to protect the drivers, and by putting broken glass or dangerous material within cardboard containers is a good thing. And it's going to be an education process. I mean, obviously the drivers want to be safe, and if there's a misunderstanding that is not recyclable but is protecting something dangerous, then the drivers will pick it up, or staff will run out and collect it based on a phone call saying, I'm just trying to do the right thing. So there will be anomalies for sure. It's just really what we need to be sensitive to is what the concerns are and how we're addressing them, and make sure that the drivers are aware of these requirements as we learn about types of anomalies such as this.
Thank you, and it's a really easy fix. You just write glass on it. But again, that's an education thing. The other part that bothers me and worries me is the enforcement. And I thank for the explanation about the garbage bags aren't going to be opened up. But undoubtedly there are going to be times when bags are left and residents do not agree that the bags should have been left. My understanding from the open house is that residents can directly call the town of Aurora and speak to the designated person when those issues arise.
Mr. Simonauskas?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct. I mean, our intention is to work with the collector and their customer service center. However, even currently, we still have calls that come straight to the town, and that's fine. I mean, the intent is that we provide service, and we provide a service that the residents value. And by all means, if there's a concern or a misunderstanding, our goal is to clarify that and educate both the drivers and the community as to what the requirements are.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to be clear, so right now it's GFL, our contract with them reads that they take all of those complaints directly from the residents.
Mr. Simonauskas?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, the main contact is through the GFL call center. Any calls that come to the town generally start through a screening process through our customer service counter, and then if there's any additional follow-up required, then staff are notified of those requirements to either follow up or try and resolve an issue.
Thank you, and I know I got a lot of feedback about that, and I think residents would prefer to deal with town staff than GFL, and haven't in some cases had much luck dealing with GFL staff. The last piece would be going forward. We have a contract till 2017, I believe, or the end of 2016. Going forward, do you expect to see any extra costs associated with the Clear Bag program?
Mr. Simonauskas?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't. The requirements for managing that waste is going to be no different than the black bag program. The only difference is rather than just checking based on weight, they're going to have a visual ability to see if there's some clear contaminants within the bag. Generally, we're not looking for the pop can or the small item, but it's really clear violations of the bylaw. And it's no different than the enforcement we currently have with our blue and green bin programs. If they find material in the blue box, they'll leave it behind or tag it as unacceptable.
Thank you.
Anything further, Councillor Gardner? No. Council, we've all had a chance to weigh in on this, and before we go around for a second round, I'd like to add my own thoughts and comments. I mean, certainly this has been before us, and we've all had a chance to share our concerns. We all have gotten them from the residents. For myself, I do agree that waste management is one of our core services, and it is a responsibility of us to be environmentally conscious and to reduce waste in all that we can. I certainly support initiatives like backyard composting and other things that we've identified in our integrated waste management plan. But, just to some of the comments earlier, with regards to the chart that Mr. Simonauskas provided in terms of the cost of the program, I mean, the savings are minimal. I mean, he's identified that the savings are $350,000 over a 10-year period, so about $35,000 a year. But that's offset by, as he shows in his chart, an increase in the cost of the residents, and so it kind of balances out. But my biggest challenge with the program, in addition to some of the other things that have been mentioned, really is that, to me, if somebody's doing the recycling and they're making every effort in their home, the Clear Bag program is not going to add to the diversion rate or help that home itself, because they're already doing everything. Really, the Clear Bag is only really going to address issues with those people who either don't know how to recycle or choose not to recycle. And so, for those that don't know how to recycle, then I think that the alternative, in my opinion, is an education program. You don't necessarily need the Clear Bag. You can use education to address those issues. And for those that don't want to, I'm not sure if the Clear Bag will solve that problem anyways, because as we've heard around the table, they can choose to willfully ignore the program and hide it in opaque bags or anything like that. And so, within this report, one of the key lines for me is that it says enforcement is required as a last resort to encourage change behaviors. And in my opinion, I see the Clear Bag program as a bit of an enforcement program, because really it's targeted towards those that don't know how to recycle or choose not to recycle. And I'd rather see us, embark on a stronger education campaign. When I read the report, it's not clear to me, over the last number of years, have we done everything within our means to properly educate the residents to that full capacity? There's been comments in the past about electronics and batteries. Are there other ways that we could do it from curbside collection? I agree that it's important for us to try and find a way to reduce waste and increase our diversion rate, but I don't want to do it through this program, not until I can be convinced that we've made every effort to educate the residents on the benefits of recycling, why they should recycle. When it's a last resort, then, I'm happy to entertain it, but I think there are other initiatives that we've identified in the Integrated Waste Management Plan that can help us reduce that waste, and I'd like to see us focus some of those efforts there. I know Mr. Simonovskis has before us in the budget a request for an education campaign around waste management. I'd rather support that and really reach out to the residents and educate them on the process and what they can do to help raise the diversion rate than to enforce a Clear Bag program. Those are my thoughts. I have Councillor Tom, then Councillor Daw, or Mayor Daw, and then Councillor Abel. I'll get it right by the end of 4 years. Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I just have a couple of questions. One thing that hasn't been brought up yet is, and just for clarification as well, for residents, under the proposal, those who use garbage cans, nothing changes for them. Through you to Mr. Simonovskis.
Mr. Simonovskis?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct if they're not lining their garbage cans with black bags.
Right.
So if they're lining them with black bags, they would just line them with clear bags. But other than that, they can continue to use their garbage cans with just their smaller bags within.
So, just to clarify, so you're saying they can throw it in loose?
Correct.
Thank you. Councillor Tom?
Thank you. I just wanted to make that clarification because there was residents who were asking about that as well. I think that one thing that we should make clear, and I think you touched on it slightly, Mr. Chair, is that most residents in Aurora take pride in recycling correctly, as best they can, and using the green bin and using the recycling bin. And I don't know many people personally they're flagrant with the rules currently, and just throwing all their stuff into a bag and not recycling. So I just want to make that clear. And you mentioned that this is aimed at those people who either don't comply because they don't know, or they don't comply because they don't want to. I think Mr. Chair, you mentioned that in your remarks just now. I actually do think that it's for everyone. And I'm going to use an example, and this is not something that I personally remember because I wasn't around, but during World War II, and there is a point to this. No, there's a point to this. No. So during World War II, one of the ways that the government tried to galvanize support for the war effort among people who couldn't contribute They couldn't contribute as a soldier, they couldn't contribute as a nurse, they couldn't, or young children. The Boy Scouts went around, and the Girl Guides, they went around to people's homes and they collected paper, fat from the kitchen, bottle caps, paper clip, like they collected scrap metal, but not like copper, they collected like, you know, everything you can imagine. And if you read a lot of the evidence, none of it was used, or very small amounts were actually used for anything useful towards the war effort. But you know what it did? It provided people with a sense that they were contributing to the war effort to defeat the Nazis. Now, that's a bit of a grave example, but many people will say that one of the biggest challenges that the world is facing at this point in time is climate change and the environment. There is a giant floating island of plastic in the Pacific Ocean right now. I don't know, or two of them. I don't know how big it is. So I could be corrected by someone. It's huge. It's continental almost in its size. And in my view, that to me comes from, you know, it comes from littering, sure, but it comes from people doing things like not recycling or not correctly disposing of their waste. And so I think this program, to me, is kind of like the Boy Scouts in World War II. I think that people will say, you know what, the environment is important to this community, and they already think this, and most people do this already, and they should be applauded for that. And I think we all agree on that most people, we have a great community, and most people recycle. So we can put that as you know, a fact for most people at this table. But it doesn't mean that they still can't contribute, and this gives them that sense of, you know, I have to be extra diligent because even though I recycle, there's the odd time that I throw that in because I don't want to recycle it. The odd time this happens, and then it just gives you that awareness that you don't have to worry about it because it's in a black bag. And as council, or as the chair pointed out, yes, there's going to be people that will willfully disobey, and they continue to. But Markham had 10% increase in diversion. They had a 10% increase in diversion. And so that means that there were people, whether they were unaware or they were perhaps recycling, but they knew they could be doing better, or there were people that just said, you know what, I ain't putting things into 2 bags and then I'm going to, you know, and I'm just going to recycle correctly, for God's sakes. There was 10% of the people of the diversion rate that increased. So to me, that's, and from what I understand, is that that's pretty well similar across the board with communities that have done this in the past. So I just wanted to make that kind of connection there. I know it's a bit of a soggy one and a bit of a lame one, but to me it's kind of the same. It's we're facing a danger, and we need to do everything we can. And I think this gives people that kind of sense of we're all contributing, we're all pulling together. Even though I recycle already and I recycle well, we're all going to pull together for climate change and for making the environment healthier and better for future generations. And then the last point I'd like to address, it's been mentioned that and I've had comments to this effect as well, that we'd rather have educational programs instead of this program. We'd rather just educate people more on their waste and see what the effects are of that. I don't know what those types of programs cost, but I imagine they're not cheap. I don't know if we've done anything that can be spoken to in the past. I don't know who this would go to through you, Mr. Chair, to perhaps Mr. Simonovskis. What type of large-scale, town-wide education programs have we, on waste, I suppose, have we done, maybe with the introduction of the green bin or whatever? And what are the costs of those types of educational programs?
Mr. Simonovskis?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So yes, that's a good example with the green bin introduction, where there was a fairly extensive campaign to get people on board with that. On an annual basis, we probably spend $10,000 to $20,000, whether it's through the notice board or through other sort of events that we promote within the paper itself, within the main body of the paper. You know, and that information is challenging as well, because if it's the same message or similar messages, people often will gloss over because it looks like the same old, same old. So there are challenges. Of course, the website's a very useful tool as well, and that has no cost to us, so that's very beneficial. But again, it has to be front and center to make it have an impact.
If I may, Mr. Chair, so that means that we're going to have to increase the scope of those types of programs, because as you mentioned, right now they're pretty much at the cap of their effectiveness. Is that not correct? Through you?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's the sense of it, is that between the calendar and the notice boards, people are seeing it, it's the same old message, it's the same program.
Councillor Tom?
If I may, so I think that, again, education's great. But if we're doing education on its own, it seems to me that there's going to have to be a hell of a lot more money put in to increase the level of education that's already out there, because people aren't recycling now, and we spend 20 grand a year on the education that we already provide. So something's that's what you just said. Is that not correct? So to me, we're gonna have to increase that to see any level of diversion from just education alone. And so we're talking about a program that's going to either save us money by just switching to clear bags, nominal as it was pointed out, but still not going to cost us any more, versus potentially paying more for education. When one, they both seem to get to the same point, to increase the diversion rate at the region. So one costs less, one costs more. From that perspective, I think it makes sense too. And the last thing I wanted to mention is that someone mentioned during their remarks, I forget who, that it's going to cost the residents more. I was under the implication that that was not the case, that the bags themselves are the exact same cost. So could someone explain to me whether or not that is the case?
Mr. Simonovskis? Thank
you, Mr. Chair.
Certainly through you, Mr. Chair, the cost won't be related to the bags. The bags will cost the same from whether the black or clear bags. There's no difference in cost from that perspective. The only additional cost a resident might have to deal with is a material that shouldn't be in the curbside collection stream anyway, and dealing with getting rid of that. So that's, and I've factored in a nominal cost for that based on how we estimated these long-term costs, assuming that there's materials that people will still have to get rid of that is just not fitting into the curbside program.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if I may, so is that like the cost of the gas to drive down to the recycling depot, or? I mean, it's free once you get down there. So essentially what they're getting away with now, they're going to have to pay for, like everyone else who's, like I drive down to that recycling depot, like you said, in Elgin Mills. It's wonderful.
I think Mr. Simonovskis mentioned earlier that some of those materials do have a cost to them as well.
Right. It's like $10 a car, I think, or something. So if you collected it and you want to take one run for your community, it's a $10 fee for the rest of you. Anyway, all I'm saying is that this is the cost to residents, I think, is very minimal. I don't know, people have been highlighting that. I think we should just maintain that. I think that those are a bit overblown, and currently I use that facility and it's free or next to free. So those are the final comments I'll make on it.
Thank you, Councillor Tom. Mayor Dahl.
Well done, sir. Well done. There's been a lot of talk about education, and quite frankly, I think a lot of education needs to start at this table. There is, first of all, there's a recycling facility, and you mentioned the one down in Elgin Mills. There's one up at Davis Drive and Woodbine. And you can take all sorts of stuff up there, electronics, aerosols, paint cans, metal, appliances, TVs, all sorts of stuff. It's kind of shocking that, well, and Councillor Gardner said that residents are going to take a hit. Well, residents shouldn't be putting that stuff in the garbage as it is. So, I mean, we're just kind of putting the responsibility where it should be, in my opinion. The MRF, by the way, MRF is the Material Recycling Facility. And that's where the trucks that pick up your recycling go. It's pretty, matter of fact, Mr. Simonovskis, could you arrange, you took me up there, I think 2 years ago. It's worth the trip. I think everybody should go up and have a look at it. It's really, and then we'll go down to the pollution control plant at Duffin Creek, which is also very interesting. There's been a lot of talk of costs. I think bringing costs into this, in my opinion, is a red herring, or as we used to hear, a canard. If we were strictly interested in cost, we would just throw everything in landfill. So if we were strictly interested in dollars and cents, we would just throw everything in landfill. We would not do any recycling whatsoever because it is more expensive than throwing stuff in landfill. It's as simple as that. Economically, it's more expensive. Socially, environmentally, it's the way to go. Because we're going to run out of spots where you can, we have an old garbage dump here in town for those people who don't know it. Down at Bayview and Bloomington. There's an old garbage dump down there. What we got here? What else did I make? Drivers as arbiters. Well, interestingly enough, my recycling wasn't picked up a couple of weeks ago because there was a bag of stuff in the blue box. The drivers get to do that very quickly. They become accustomed to that very quickly. I don't believe that's an issue at all, and it seems to have worked well in Markham. Markham is entirely, both Councillor Thompson and Deputy Mayor were down in Markham for a tour. Markham's now completely clear bag, is that correct? Drivers get to pick that up very quickly. Again, I will go back to, I believe it's the right way to go. There's been some very interesting discussion around here. I can appreciate that, again, that not everybody's on side, but we do process these things. So it's, electronics should be processed differently, and we do have, and there's a gentleman in the office there who runs recycling programs here in town. We've had a number of, we have 2 or 3 a year of electronics recycling, because I've been standing out there in January when it's somewhat chilly, collecting this stuff. So we do that. The bank, I think the Royal Bank over at Orchard Heights, Aurora Heights and Yonge has a bin out front. We typically have a bin out front here in town where we see old computers and monitors and things like that. So it's becoming more and more easy or less difficult to get rid of your electronics. You don't necessarily need to go up to the recycling facility. So again, obviously I'm supporting it, but I just wanted to make those points. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I picked up on a great local blog that we have, Community Focus, and there was a great article done on what happens to your garbage, and it's a great article by Dominic Romeo, and he talks about e-waste and where the 3 recycles are, and one is the blue bin. And for a blue bin recycling item, it goes to a facility in York Region located in East Gwillimbury. Everything arrives there, it's sorted by people. Items that can't be recycled or may contaminate or interfere are removed at this point. Paper, cardboard, plastic bottles, aluminum cans, etc. will continue through the process. For green bin composting items, similar to recycling. There are various steps involved in processing the waste, and then on to residual waste, which is everything else that we put into our green bags, which we're now asking that we go put into your clear bags. And that everything is diverted correctly. Typically what is left is residual waste stream, plastic packaging materials, polyurethane, and other items that are not recyclable. The contents of this waste stream are becoming more and more important because they go to a transfer station consolidated, and they're designated for energy from waste, which is an incineration. So we burn those, and we burn them clean, and we take that waste and we come up with basically zero. And we convert some of that waste into energy. So this all speaks to knowledge, and with knowledge we have an understanding of what it is we're trying to do. We talk about the 3 pillars in our community. I think we're all familiar with it. It is community, economics, and environment. And that's what stewardship is, and that's what we're talking about here. And we're taking a step forward, and we're trying to attain that. Mr. Chair, I recall when seatbelts were first introduced, I had friends that said, I'm not ever wearing a seatbelt because they can't get you out of a car wreck. And they read an article somewhere, so they will never wear a seatbelt. And I said, well, I think seatbelts save lives. And they're, no, they don't save lives. So there was no way to convert that person in a conversation. It only took enforcement, and enforcement was done by policing. What we're trying to do is gradually give you a sense of belonging into the community. The same we have with vaccinations recently with smallpox. We have people that will not vaccinate. They don't recall, they weren't alive, the horrors generations ago to polio and smallpox and the devastation that it did. To them, it just never happened. What you're doing is something evasive to their child. And there's no way. They would rather not ignore any of the facts. And so these are the sort of things with knowledge and understanding. It goes on about ozone. Remember, we had the aerosol cans. It took a while, but we had to go to the manufacturers and other nations and collectively say, this is affecting the ozone. There was a lot of people spraying stuff that just would not conceive, would not even acknowledge what you were saying. And so it goes on, smoking, drinking and driving. There was always people that will tell you that, I don't care what you're telling me, this is not what I'm privy, and I just refuse to acknowledge it, so I'm not going to go along with it. And so we do meet resistance as we go along for change and for things. For us to say that a clear bag is going to be good for our environment, is good socially and good for stewardship, people will say resistant and say, no, it's inconvenience and it's going to cost more money, and how dare people come and split my bags open. And it doesn't matter how many times we say it. They're still going to say that. I've had many people say to me, it all goes to the same place. And that's why this article that I just sort of read, and I just took the highlights, is very valuable. Because if we understand that, yes, we used to do landfills. There's a landfill in Kiel that is now being vented and contained, and they do extraordinary things to contain the leaching. There's one in Mississauga that is a hill. It was formed and they converted it into a golf course. It's a very tough golf course, I might say. And there's a little bit of a ski hill there, and that's on a dump waste. The earliest one that I recall is at the Bayview, and where it ends and it comes down, there's a big hill there in the Don Valley that in the 20s was the disposal site. Landfills are going away. We had landfills here. They were typically not considered dangerous. They were convenient. You just took it. Now we compact it and send it down to Michigan. They've now refused it. We found a place in London. We thought about taking it up to Canadian Shield. This is a highly expensive way of doing it. I know the mayor said it's not as expensive as recycling, but eventually it will be when energy and gas and truckloads barreling down the highway, and then you've got to improve your infrastructure and the roads that the big heavy trucks are doing. So really, the way to go is to try and achieve 0% recycling for landfill. And you look at some of the best European cities, and they are always a bit ahead of us here in North America because they see it a generation or two before. Places like Norway and Sweden that are way above us, and the standard of living that they employ. It is a relationship. The better you handle environment and stewardship, typically the better health you are, the longer you live, the healthier the community, the better you are economically, the better educated you are, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I am still going to support this. I realize that there's going to be a learning curve, but I have witnessed it, and I encourage the other councillors here that don't want to go along with this program to sort of give it a little time, check out what's going on in Markham, what our neighbors are doing, read other material to see, yes, I can see that there is some benefit. There is some inconvenience because some people are going to tell you, this is an inconvenience. And no matter how many times I tell them, they're going to say it's going to cost you more money, they're going to poke my garbage, and I won't do it, and I can't believe that I'm doing it. One big notice in Markham that they did notice was that the number of people that came for blue bins and green bins was phenomenal. So that's why their rates went up. Their diversion rates went up because the people started going, okay, you know what? The kids are asking me questions. Why am I always secreting in the garage and emptying my grass cuttings? And what's Daddy doing with all the pop cans and tying them up all nice and neat? So the thing is, we have to go and get the bins to do it, and they couldn't keep them in supply. And the best advice that Deputy Mayor Jack Keith told me on my way out, he said, make sure you got a big supply sitting in there because your residents will start coming forward. I don't want to say people aren't doing it and it's bad. I just want to say, come and join us and do it, and let's work together, all of us. I did drive around in the town today, and not every home has a green bin. So what does that tell you? Probably there's some Coke cans in that garbage bag that I can't see. You know, I look. Typically, a home has more than just a couple of newspapers. There's bins, plastic containers, pop tins, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't see that. Not in every home. I've been using the clear bag off and on for the last half year. It goes in the grocery bag, I tie it up. There's some loose ends. If you don't want to show people what you have, and I don't know why you wouldn't, but they don't seem bothered about it in Markham, put it into a garbage can. and recycle. It's good for our community, and it's good for our environment. So just a couple of comments.
Thank you, Councillor Abel. I have Councillor Kim next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make it clear that I don't want to be misunderstood. Like personally, I think this is the way to go. I think eventually Aurora will have a clear plastic program or clear plastic bag program, whether it be in June or sometime next year or whenever. I think, as I was badly informed as well, I think it's just a matter of education. And right now, from the emails and calls and just talking to my neighbors, I'm not sure what the ratio is. It might be 50-50, 60-40, either way. And it'd be nice to have more people on board and you don't have to drag them, you know, kicking and screaming. It'd be nice to bring along as many as possible, whether it be a 70-34 clear bags as opposed to it being 50-50 and to drag everybody in with a negative attitude. So for me, it's just it's about giving more time to educate and properly inform. And I know that this has been talked about since I think it was last May. But I think it's only since the fall where people started to take notice and really talk about it and realize that this is really coming up pretty soon, and then the alarm bells are ringing. I think that's a good thing. And I do believe in, I'm very environmentally conscious, and I don't think costs should be an issue. I mean, I'll pay an extra $100 a year if I have to be more environmentally conscious. But for me, it's just a matter of bringing people on board. Personally, I'm on board, but because I'm not making decisions for myself or other constituents who don't, who are not on board, I just want to speak for them. And I think that properly informed and they put time out to better inform themselves, I think they'll come to a rational choice and come on board as well. So for me, I think this might be the timeline and getting people more time to come on board with this. So I think I'm on board. I think it's just, for me, it's just a timeline and just having more time for education. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Simonovskis. I sincerely hope that if a resident decides to use a garbage can and they line it with a green garbage bag instead of a clear garbage bag, that's not going to be refused by our garbage collectors.
Mr. Simonovskis, is that a question?
It's a comment. There's a difference between green garbage bags and clear garbage bags at the curb. But if a resident is lining something with a red bag or a green bag or a purple bag and leaving the bin open, I'm hoping that garbage isn't going to be refused. I'll just leave that with you. You want to answer that? No. Okay. We were sending our green garbage bags to Michigan, I believe. And if any electronic waste was found in those green garbage bags, my understanding was that the whole load could be refused. So with respect to the Durham York Energy, that's going to be coming online soon, that facility. I thought that if we sent green garbage bags to that facility and it had e-waste in it, that our garbage could also be refused there. So through you, Mr. Chair, am I incorrect on that?
Mr. Simonovskis.
Through you, Mr. Chair, in reviewing the information bulletin that was published by the region recently with regards to the facility, my read of that document and having conversation with staff is that only material collected within, say for York Region's purposes, only material collected through the regional program will be accepted at that facility. So a private contractor would not be permitted to go to the facility. So the control is in how the material is collected. I don't believe, and I didn't see anything that would suggest that if there's anything that would be considered a contaminant, that the load would be rejected, because the way the facility operates is the truck backs up to a pit and basically dumps. So once the material's coming out of the truck, it's basically out of the truck.
Thank you. So I have been telling residents the wrong thing. I'll have to correct that. With respect to mentioning in specific, the costs with respect to transfer of waste delivery from town to customer through increased use of community environmental centers. That's mentioned 5 times in the report. And I was assuming it had some significance. So through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Simonovskis.
Mr. Simonovskis?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the significance is, again, the increase of the social consciousness around managing waste. If the current program has restrictions on what can go at the curb, and people aren't aware of that, and they're putting material that shouldn't be going to the curb, and I'll use construction waste as an easy example, then that's where the CECs become a valuable component of the entire collection program. So there may be community residents who haven't even been to a CEC. I think most of us, and I've heard from some of the councillors' discussions, that most of us do visit a CEC at least once or twice a year for waste that we just can't get rid of, throw it in the trunk. I know I do. And really it's just trying to accentuate the reality that a CEC is part of a person's overall waste management program, and it's not something that you just visit because it's a great place to go. It should be part of your overall waste management strategy as an individual.
Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. And just as a follow-up on the chart on page 8, you did bring it to our attention that it would cost us less with the clear bag program. The difference being that the residents would have to take their materials up to a recovery program. So whether that's gas or tipping fees or whatever, it's in the chart. So I think it's something that we all have to be aware of if the residents come back to us on that one. But quite rightly, it shouldn't be there in the beginning. So it's a good move.
Council, any further discussion? Seeing none, I will call the vote, and I'll ask you to raise your hand high. All those in favor of the motion on the screen? All those opposed? The motion fails. Can I get a motion to receive the report? Mayor Daw, seconder. Councillor Peary. All those in favor of just receiving the report? Motion carried. That didn't take long now, did it? I will ask if there are any other items of interest to the members of the audience. Seeing none, we will start then with item number 1, which is a request for a sign variance. And that item was pulled by Councillor Abel. Councillor Abel, would you care to put the staff recommendation on the floor?
Yes. Yes, Mr. Chair. I'll put
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Tom. Councillor Abel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to ask through you, the sign variance is the menus that are part of the drive-through and are basically, in my mind, contained on site.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Who's not allowed. The variance is to allow for 2 menu boards, each having a size of 5.2 meters squared. They are specifically for the drive-through facility, and there is one drive-through facility, but they've created a second stacking lane or a second ordering stacking lane. And hence the reason that they're coming forward with a request for variance for that additional menu board sign. As well, the menu board signs exceed the limits of the bylaw because they include an integrated communication feature.
Thank you. And I wanted to be clear because I guess it really just pertains to a drive-in. We have seen variances for that display to those that pass by, and this is a little different. So it's really not affecting anywhere except the cars that are driving through.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. Attachment number 1 shows the, it's a site plan which shows the 2 lanes and the location of the menu boards, which are at the rear of the McDonald's and to the north of the property, and they're not really visible from anywhere. They're quite protected. And
thank you. So I just wanted to be, I thought I would just bring that forward. That information, I'll be supporting this variance.
Any other councillors wish to speak to this item? Councillor Kim?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I'm okay with the variance, but on page 2 of the item, the second stacking lane and menu board sign is to provide greater customer service. And if the greater customer service means that that you're going to be served faster and receive the food faster and get in and out faster, that's my interpretation of better customer service. But I'm likening this to a doctor's office where you're waiting outside and you wait a half hour to see your doctor, and then they just push you into a couple of other rooms and you just end up waiting another half hour or so. Will they have more doctors in there or more employees to actually handle the volume that's going to be coming in because there's 2 lanes? Otherwise, you're just going to have a lot of idle cars.
Councillor Kim, can I get you to direct your question to the motion on the floor, which is really about the sign variance as opposed to the operation of the store?
Sure. Okay. No, because it says here better customer service, I'm just wondering how that customer service is going to manifest itself. Thank you.
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the additional stacking lane is intended to do exactly what you've suggested, which is to increase the amount of customers they can serve. I'm assuming they've done their feasibility studies and they've got their business figured out. I'm thinking McDonald's has their business figured out, and it's my opinion that the back end portion, which is what's happening in the kitchen and their ability to serve the customers, they have gone through that process and have identified that yes, they can serve more customers by creating this additional snacking lane.
Councillor Kim? Any other further questions or comments from council? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Item number 2 was pulled by Councillor Tom. Councillor Tom, would you care to put the staff recommendation on the floor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll do it as is.
Thank you. Seconder? Mayor Dahl?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one point of clarification. In the report on page 2, it says, I had 2 questions. Councillor Kim actually asked it when we were talking about clear bags, about harmonization and clear bags and that. Mr. Simonovskis is not here, so perhaps I can direct my question to Mr. Garby. Just on page 2, it says collaborative savings of $1 million per year was projected over the life of the contract. York Region conducted an audit on behalf of the municipalities, and this audit confirmed that 2008 savings were higher than expected. So I guess I have 2 questions. I'm not sure if they're answerable, but so how much of that was Aurora's share? If it's not answerable, or it would be more appropriate somewhere else, then.
Is the question answerable?
It is answerable. I just don't have the information at my fingertips. I can endeavor to provide that to council.
Perhaps for next week?
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Garby. And that's all I'll have to say. So that's all I really wanted to get at. That and the harmonization, which was addressed earlier.
Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if we will be able to answer these questions, but maybe just make a note of them to perhaps follow up. There is actually a growing number of municipalities considering removing glass products from recycling. Is that something we're contemplating? I heard a really, really interesting CBC radio, Mayor Dawes nodding his head, clearly I'm not the only person who listens to old man radio. Joking.
Point of privilege. Point of privilege, Mr. Speaker.
Councillor Peary, can you please rephrase that?
I'm not sure I can. But it was just really interesting listening to it's not your conventional way of thinking, but glass products are much more expensive to recycle, and when you burn them down, two byproducts are created. You recreate sand, but you also create a sludge, and that mix of product is actually less valuable than the sand, new sand that people use. So maybe something to look at in future. I'm not sure how we would rectify this problem, whether we're going to start our own glass depot or something to that effect. But just something to keep in mind. And the other thing I think probably is more pertinent, there have been great efficiencies from municipalities who've implemented a bin system, trucks that utilize one driver to pick up the bins, dump it, all from within the truck. They don't have to get out of the truck. I'm not sure how they would check to see if the bins are clear bags or opaque bags, but I do think we should be moving in that direction in the long term because it is much more cost efficient to run that kind of system, and I think personally it provides a better level of service to our residents if we were to move towards a bin system. So I know that we'll be reporting back on different topics, but I think those 2 points are things that I would definitely like to see in a future report. So I hope that those comments are noted.
Mayor Daw?
In defense, I just want to point out that I'm not yet officially a senior citizen, and that I started listening to CBC radio when I was 23.
Thank you, Mayor Dow. Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. I would also like to add that I listen to CBC radio, and I'm not a man. So watch your language. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Garby. Mr. Garby, there's two things that are important to me in this report. The first one is, and I would like to go on the record with this, page 2, it's towards the bottom of the page, and it says that when we did the new contract in 2007, it provided us with an increased level of service with respect to waste and recycling. In fact, our garbage collection went from every week to every other week. There were reasons for that, but I don't think we can call that an increased level of service. If you'd pass that on to Mr. Simonovskis, please. On the next page, right at the top, page 3, it says, additionally, and where feasible, the Smart for Living plan and Integrated Waste Management Master Plan will be incorporated into this contract. Well, I see from the report that the Integrated Waste Management Plan is going to be incorporated. But I'm not sure about the Smart for Living plan. And 100%, in my opinion, needs to be incorporated into any new contracts.
Mr. Simonovskis stands in, but I'll get Mr. Garby to comment because I thought we approved that last year.
Through you, Councillor Thompson, that's right. It will be incorporated into the specifications. I think what this is referring to is there may be aspects of other municipalities where it may not be feasible or practical. So in some of the rural areas, it may not be. So this is common language that we've all agreed to use in the N6. So there might be. So we've generalized some of the statements in it to be applicable to all 6.
Okay, thank you. And the last page, just above, linked to the strat plan, we're talking about helping out the school boards who are now mandated to, required to implement waste diversion programs. Just wanted to make sure that this isn't going to be in any way a problem for us? And the question is, will it be an advantage to us?
Mr. Garvey?
Through you, Councillor Thompson, the purpose of this is just to make our process available to the school board. So it's a benefit to them. It's really nothing. Nothing to us. Nothing to us. It just says that it just helps the school boards get preferential pricing as well.
Thank you. I just wanted to know if it affected us either way. Thank you.
Any further comments from council? Councilor Maracas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to, I guess, Mr. Garvey. I don't know if this was mentioned while I was out. I mean, I read in the paper that Stouffville's looking to possibly not be part of this and kind of go off on their own, and I was wondering if we know the situation with that and what effect that would have on this.
Mr. Garvey?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Stouffville has confirmed these recommendations, so they are part of the contract. So.
And just one more question through you, Mr. Chair. Are all 6 municipalities, are they all currently following the same type of guidelines and rules when it comes to their waste, like how they put it out? I mean, we talked about the clear bags, so like if we had clear bags, do all of them have clear bags? Do they do bag tagging? Like, are we all on the same page, or is there differences between the 6 municipalities?
Mr. Garvey?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we actually have 6 pages. We're all, and that was a uniqueness of the contract. We were all able to provide our own level of service, but so there's subtleties within each municipality. Georgina has bag tags, as you know, and we have no bag limits, so there is differences. We're going to try to harmonize as much as possible our uniqueness to limit them. But the beauty of the contract, or the uniqueness of it, was that we were able to have our subtleties by each municipality. So that's where we stand right now.
And I guess just one more follow-up. Would it be safe to say that if we did harmonize it, that there would be somewhat of a cost savings because everyone's following the same thing, and then the contractor would be able to do it throughout the whole Northern 6 instead of differently throughout each municipality?
Mr. Garvey? Or would you like to now turn that over to Mr. Simonauskas?
I can, well, I think anytime you can harmonize as much as possible, there's a cost advantage. I don't think there's a tremendous cost disadvantage to having our own rules. But Mr. Simonauskas knows better than me, then he's welcome to weigh in.
Badly phrased, I guess.
Councilor Marcus?
I guess just what's the likelihood that it will be harmonized? Is it going to be a tough road to go down, or does it look like it will get to that point, or?
Mr. Simonauskas, would you care to comment?
Sure, Mr. Chair, this might be better for the CAO, but I'll comment on I mean, a good example is the bag limits. You know, our current bag limit is 3, and so let's just say that the 6 municipalities decide that 2 is the right limit. How eager are we to reduce ours to 2? So it's those kind of council type decisions that will have to be made to, you know, as a staff policy direction, it's easy to say we'll harmonize it. It's the political aspects of, you know, the community not being receptive to an increase or decrease or a change this way or that way. So that's the bigger challenge. So I think it's going to be incremental changes over time, and we'll look at moving towards a common bylaw and hit the areas where the best opportunities are.
Okay, and then I got just one more question, just to go a little bit further from what Councillor Perry said about, you know, he'd like to see the bin type of, you know, machinery come in, and the one operator comes in. That's really good. Mood lighting. All right. Yeah, so just to that point, in my mind, I would see that as a disadvantage if we moved to that and not everyone did. It would be an increase in cost to the whole contract as a whole, because the contractor would have to have different trucks for our area compared to the other areas. So if it wasn't something that everyone was on board with, I don't think it would be advantage for us to do something like that.
Mr. Simonauskas?
Certainly through you, Mr. Chair. So if we're looking at the automated bin, which is what the City of Toronto has, you're absolutely right. If we convert to that type of a system, it would have to be all municipalities to make it appropriate for the contractor. That is a big change, and socially, there's a lot of I'm sure a lot of concern with how that would be managed and rolled out, and a community would have to definitely be responsible to communicate that to us what their feelings are on that.
Councilor Marcus.
That's all.
Any further questions from council? Mr. Simonovskis, I have a question. On page 2, fourth paragraph in, it talks about the goal of the joint initiative, and that the last line really is about the aim was to divert a minimum of 65% of waste from landfill. As we saw in the earlier report, Aurora was sitting around 62 or 63 at the curb. So does that mean that we didn't achieve our goal through this project?
Sorry, so through you, Mr. Chair, that target that was set back in 2006 when the green bin program was going to start. So that